Here is another important guideline. I know, before you say a word, I know that I say all the guidelines are important, and they absolutely are. There's not a single one that you can just slide over. I worked really hard on these guidelines. There really is no fat to cut. In fact, there are some things that I need to slide in there. But they're all important. It's like kind of, which is your favorite child, Lace? They're all my favorite children. I love them all. I particularly love this one. I have to be careful with this one. But first, wait. Let me read it first before I give you my rationale. And I also tell you why I'm going to be very careful in how I present this particular guideline to you. Let me read it. As much as possible, we do our work in public. Toward that end, we kindly discourage PMs, private messages, that attempt to take it outside and do an ancillary discussion. We have found this to often be an attempt to avoid accountability. Moreover, it damages community cohesion. We should all know the same thing in the same amount, in the same time, as much as absolutely possible. When we do get private messages that query or comment either in our personal pages, because every single one of my staff has had that happen to them, I've had that happen, or in Lace on Race private messaging, and we feel that it's more appropriate on the original post, we're going to request that you restate your comment or query there. As well, we ask that you keep side conversations to an absolute minimum. We know that it's a real temptation when you have friends that you know from other spaces and it's so exciting when you find them here in Lace on Race and you just want to talk about everything, or friends that you have made here authentically. That is great. Yes, absolutely. But having parallel conversations on post deprives the rest of the community. Let me break that down because people will, the minute anytime I give a guideline or a directive, people automatically do their best to look for loopholes. And I'm going to try to head that off at the pass. When I'm talking about no private messaging, if you want to talk about crochet, talk to Crochet. Claire can talk to Jessie about crochet in a private message all they want. Here they are. They just got to know each other. It's awesome. They're learning how to cleave and be community together. But it is a different thing altogether if they are on a thread together and they break that out, either to reinforce each other or to say, usually, very rarely do these side conversations, these side chats spiral people upward. Usually it spirals them downward. And when it's in sunlight, when everyone knows what people are saying, it does help for community cohesion. It helps you to become a more congruent person overall. If you've got 5 side chats running and you're a small, slightly different iteration of all of these people in side chats, well, that's not saying a whole lot for your cohesion. That's not saying a lot about your praxis. So we want to be able to keep that to a minimum. As well, this is where I get a little uncomfortable. During these guidelines, I think that one of the things that hasn't been said overtly, but I'll say it here, is that there is a reason that I started Lace on Race in 2018. I had something to say that I didn't feel that anyone else was saying. I had a method that had been percolating in my head for a while that I didn't see anyone else conceptualizing or implementing. And also there was a vibe that I saw in a lot of spaces that I thought was less than healthy and less than conducive of the work that people said they were there to do. I have to be very careful with this because to talk about what I decided to do is drawing a contrast between what I see in other spaces. And I think that it is possible to be able to speak well and hopefully cogently and lucidly about the things that matter to me without having to denigrate others in the process. That's part of my praxis, that I can say, this is what I've chosen, without casting, as the kids say, see if I'm saying it right, casting shade or side eye to what someone else is doing. We practice kind candor. There are other spaces that do not, and that is not a slam on them. However, in order for me to implement the method and the ethos that had been percolating in my noggin for years when I was writing for other people, that did mean that I had to do things differently. That is where kind candor comes in. Um, and one of the things that also was something that I wanted to switch up a little bit in this space was the idea of side chats, and was the idea of people kind of taking it outside. And so what you wound up with was one or more or several cohorts. Um, None of them were on the same page all the time, and there wound up being factionalism and adversarial. Ah, that will hurt cohesion and unity like nobody's business. If you have any question about what I'm talking about, go to the Hope series, the Weekend of Hope series, and look at the very last one. I did the wrap up on that, the Lace on Race Vision, and it talks a lot about the things that I saw in other spaces that I knew that I would not be able to continue if I were to be able to have the space that I thought would do the most good in the most cohesive and effective way. As well, when people are taking it, even if it's a good thing, oh my gosh, I love Lace on Race, I love you, right? There's still not a lot of accountability in those spaces. I will tread very carefully here. There were spaces that I wrote for and was a moderator and an admin for that did kind of have that. And I did see some side chats that wound up going incredibly sideways. Incredibly, to the point where those side chats were gone and it almost spelled the end of the entity itself. That simply cannot happen here. That is why when we do mentoring, because mentoring is kind of a form of side chat, it's going to be one person leading or mentoring another or more people, depends on how many mentees we actually have as opposed to mentors that we have, and how much bandwidth the mentor will have. Sometimes that'll be a one-on-one, sometimes it'll be more of a group thing, but they are side chats. Here's where it's different than in the places that I had served in previously. I and my staff reserve the right to be a silent presence. Luckily for y'all, I have a lot on my plate. So when we start this up, it's not as though I'm going to be like, have you ever seen those walls like in security cameras where there's like 30 different windows and it's like, oh my God, no. I want to make sure that there's accountability. I want to make sure that everything's okay. I probably won't be doing a lot of talking. In fact, and I might say howdy early on, but then I'm going to go out. But I do want to be able to take a look. In those groups that I had, we didn't notice how sideways things had gone until the train was completely off the rails and there was simply no saving it. You had to basically terminate the group. I don't want to do that here. And one way that we do that is making sure that we have a shared ethos and that people agree that my being able to look in is not big sister-ish, but it is, oh yeah, Lace cares enough that she wants to make sure. And the people that, as well as people who Lace had trained. So that's part of it. And as well, people had talked about, and I think we need to make the covert overt here. When we move to the Lace on Race Cafe, it will be something of a different vibe. The chef's table will be, again, an opt-in space, but it will be an opt-in space that we can have discernment with. Right now in Lace on Race, anybody that wants to be part of Lace on Race is part of Lace on Race. That's why I'm always a little bit tickled when people go, can I become a member? Oh, honey, when you're here, your family. This is Olive Garden. Pass the breadsticks. You're good. You're good. You're here. That is going to be true for the takeout window. When you're here, your family. So if there is an analog to what we're doing now And what we're conceptualizing for the Lace on Race Cafe, the takeout window is what we're doing now. It's opt-in for everybody. Lace on Race Cafe is going to be a bit different. Anybody can opt in, but there are going to be criteria, and you'll know if you hit those criteria or not. If you want to be part of this, then yes. If you want to be a criteria in training, what we're calling right now a sustainer in training, then yes, you are more than welcome. If we think that for whatever reason, your intermittency, what maybe you haven't been able to have a chance to read all of the pinned posts yet and you've been here a while, maybe there's been some contentiousness and we're not quite sure about your resilience and your ability to hold your own hand and your ability to have emotional regulation within this space, we're going to be really honest with you about that. And we won't leave you there. We won't leave you there. I have to say it again. We won't leave you there. That is the whole point of mentorship. We want to get you there because not only do we want to meet you where you are, we also have a vision for where you could be. So yes, we want to be able to have all of these things. So far we've talked about three things really. We've talked about the dangers of side conversations and how they can be deleterious to what we're trying to do here. We're talking about the accountability and the courage that it takes to do our work in public. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say about doing work in public as we move to the Lace on Race space. Wow, that's a lot of rhyming. Right now, there are people who use Facebook avatars and close approximations of their names, and we can live with that. We can live with that. The avatar needs to be something that looks a little like you. Danny, for instance, has that little cartoon avatar, but it looks a lot like Danny. I want one. I don't know how to do one. That's not hiding yourself. You know, Maleza uses Embo Flores, but everyone knows her as Maleza. So when she's on the boards as Embo Flores, I say Maleza and boom, there it is. But it is different, kind of like we saw in that unfortunate exchange on Twitter when someone was making huge efforts to obfuscate who they were, to hide behind an avatar, to hide behind an alias. We do not do that here. That's not how you live in real life. That would be like you're coming into my living room dressed up for Halloween with like a Zorro mask on or something, and I can't find you and I can't locate you. What we were saying before in the other video about assuming that you're a good actor, part of that means being willing to have shields down, to turn off your cloaking device. So there's that. And also that we want to keep away from factionalism and cliquishness as much as possible. And we realize that when we're going to this new iteration, that the potential for that is real. I hope that you trust that we have thought about this a lot, both the potential great things that we can do with the conceptualization that we have, the ability to go deeper and farther with different cohorts, and also that we've thought about the potential pitfalls as well. As someone, and I'm going to get personal here, as someone who was once over 300 pounds in 8th grade, holding her tray in a new junior high school and knowing that nobody was going to ask her to the table, I know what it feels like to feel on the outside looking in. I know what it feels like when people are laughing and talking and you're outside and you're wishing you could be at that table. One way to do that, one way to alleviate that, one way to take away this idea of in-group and out-group, cliques and geeks. Olive Garden, your family. But we do reserve the right to ask more of you when you decide to take your place at Chef's Table. To continue the analogy of Horseman Junior High School, circa 1976, I eventually found my way into the table that people would have considered the geeks and the nerds tables. We are not going to talk about just how well that cohort has done because it's kind of annoying. I am intimidated by pretty much everybody who sat at that table from me. And even as, and this is important, even as we kind of came into ourselves as we moved to high school, that table stayed. There were high school presidents in that. There were people who starred in theater in that. There were sports geeks in that cohort, but they never, ever forgot. And there was always room at their tables. We just made the table bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We were the biggest table at Crawford High. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's how I envision Chef's Table. That's how I envision it for you. The last thing I want to talk about, I need to read it again, is something that doesn't really happen for a lot of you, but when it does, and we want to hit it squarely today. As well, says the guidelines, we have found that people often use the private messaging feature either to me or my staff, either in personal messages or in Lace on Race, to essentially glean a consult from either Lace or admin team. If we feel that's the case, we will make the covert overt and confront it kindly and squarely with the requester. This is part of Lace's liberation as a Black woman. It is also a regression from our ethos to treat everyone in this space fairly and eye to eye. It is disingenuous to come at me or my staff with a question that is only tangentially about the matter at hand, but then they want something that's like, wow, this if we had this conversation in anything approaching a substantial way, this is at least an hour, maybe two. And I have brought this up to people, and they do one of two things. They grovel and they fawn, oh my gosh, I'm not worthy of your time, and they bail. Or all you do is talk to people, you're not worth my time. So it's either grandiosity or shame. What it isn't is looking at me eye to eye and saying, if I want an hour's worth of your time, then it's worth compensation. Again, it kind of goes back to this deep, deep discomfort that so many people have in this space of the fact that, yes, I get compensation for the work that I do and the knowledge that's in my noggin. I have a lot of fun here. I'm a goof. I'm the first one to admit it. But I also know a little bit. Actually, I know a lot. And so if someone is asking me about their child or someone is asking me about their workplace and it goes beyond a 1 or 2 sentence exchange, then yes, you get my rate card. We can talk about whether or not it's full freight, but at the very least, there needs to be an acknowledgement of what the dynamic is that's happening here. And a lot of times people don't want to have that. They don't want to have that conversation, and they're mortified when I make it overt. I would love to be able to do consults with you in one-on-one and in groups, in corporate settings, but people need to know what they're getting and all of that. But to basically kind of slide in and act like we're just two buds having this conversation, that's not respecting me, and it's not respecting what I know, and it certainly isn't respecting my staff. So, my goodness, we finished with this guideline. There was a lot power-packed in this guideline. As always, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. And wow, I am loving this. We've only got a few more guidelines to go, and then we can start talking about the 5 tenets again, which I am so excited about. So here we go. Let's stay cohesive. Let's make sure everyone knows the same thing in the same amount at the same time. Let's make sure that we keep factionalism and cliques to a minimum. Let's make sure that there is no table where anybody feels excluded. We just make the table bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's make sure that we remember that we're walking together. I think this is not a secret. I love y'all. I love the work that we do together. Keep walking.